After a long stint in Kentucky, I'm heading back down to Texas. Got some things I need to get done down there.
Victor Travis 9, 10 o'clock, about 3 miles, appears to be northbound. The primary target on the side now, we don't know.
Chelsea and I have been doing a ton of flying, ton of filming, all sorts of stuff up here in Kentucky. I'm taking the long cruise back to Texas. While I'm sitting here at cruise, basically doing nothing, listening to music, monitoring all the systems and the radio, I might as well just go through everything that's on the panel in this airplane.
I'm Josh, a pilot and flight instructor who loves the sky, sharing it with those around me and using it to see the world from a new perspective. Flying can seem super complex, but I make it my mission to promote safe practices while enjoying the beauty this world has to offer. Subscribe to Climb Into the Cockpit on future adventures. This is Aviation 101.
0991 New Orleans, clear to the Foley Airport via F5 on departure, maintain 2,000 feet.
Appears to be northbound. The primary target on the side now, we don't know.
Chelsea and I have been doing a ton of flying, ton of filming, all sorts of stuff up here in Kentucky. I'm taking the long cruise back to Texas. I'm gonna bring the airplane back to my dad so he can use it, and I've got a few things to do work-wise, catch up on down in Texas. It's a nice, clear and crisp, blue skies kind of day. I'm at 8,500 feet. It's 56 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 Celsius outside, so it feels like I've got air conditioning blasting in the middle of August, which is awesome, and I have got about a 20-knot tailwind. The life's pretty good right now, and I'm going to be able to make this trip from Louisville, Kentucky down to San Marcos, Texas in a Skyhawk that does not have long-range tanks with only one fuel stop. Normally I have to do two, so it's going to be a pretty easy day of flying. While I'm sitting here at cruise, basically doing nothing, listening to music, monitoring all the systems and the radio, I might as well just go through everything that's on the panel in this airplane and just go through it all, show you exactly what this airplane is equipped with. I have certain placards on the panel that I've gotten questions about. What does this mean? What does that mean? All that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to use my phone here and talk my way through the panel while I'm up here at cruise. We'll start over here on the left side of the panel, which is where I will begin by pausing the music. And I'm going to be monitoring everything as I'm going here. I don't have an autopilot in this airplane yet. Which is what a lot of people ask, but I am not equipped with an autopilot at this time, so I'm basically just using the rudder to keep us on course and monitoring our altitude plus or minus 100 feet. We're VFR, so it's not of tremendous importance. This little guy right here is a little Bluetooth receiver, costs like 20 bucks on Amazon. You charge it up, battery lasts like 10 hours, and I've got some command strip type Velcro right there, and it just sticks on there. I've got a little cable, if the camera will adjust for the lighting, a little 3.5 millimeter stereo cable. Got it kind of tucked behind the panel here. Plugs right in there, which connects to the audio panel up here, and that feeds music into the intercom. That's what I just paused. A really cool thing about having that on board, or if you have a newer airplane that actually has Bluetooth built into the audio panel, or any of the audio panels that have an aux plug. This one has that plug, but it's also got a hookup for it for an auxiliary jack, which is what we have. I have ForeFlight, or my iPad actually is connected to that little Bluetooth receiver up there, so I'm actually able to get audible. Make sure that wasn't for me. Okay. So I'm actually able to get audible traffic alerts and terrain alerts, airspace alerts, all that kind of stuff right here on ForeFlight, and it will go to that receiver and pump into my intercom, and I'll actually hear that, hear those alerts on the audio system in the airport through my headset. So, little $20 receiver there, plugged right into the audio panel. This plate right here is covering up where all the old engine instruments used to be. There used to be a tachometer here, 2 fuel gauges, oil pressure, oil temp, and then the ammeter was right here. The clock used to be right here. We moved the flap gauge up to here, which is we have full range flaps in this airplane, so we don't actually have a detent where you like slide it into 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30, 40, etc. We actually have to hold this down. And that's why a lot of people have asked, what are you doing when you're counting? I say 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. I'm actually holding down the flap switch and counting because this gauge isn't tremendously responsive. You got to kind of knock on it to get it to loosen up. We're going to get that replaced as well sometime soon. But that's what I'm doing when I'm counting. I'm holding down the flap switch and counting. About 3 seconds gives me 10 degrees. Another 3 gives me 20. About 4 seconds gives me 30. So that's what I'm doing there. So that's the flap gauge. This is a compass deviation card. Every airplane's required to have this somewhere on the panel or in the airplane. And it basically corrects for the magnetic deviation errors that are in this compass when it's installed on this panel with avionics on and the engine at cruise power. That's basically a correction for all of the magnetic errors. Right here we've got the airspeed indicator. It's in knots. You can see we're cruising about 93, 94 indicated. The Garmin G5 right here also has airspeed. This one is the primary. This one is basically a backup. I have these little sticky things here. That's just how I zip tie cables for power cables for the cameras and stuff out of the way, so it's distraction free while I'm flying with cameras. There's another one of those little command strip Velcro things right here. That's where I mount the audio recorder. Coming down, there's another one of the zip tie points. Here's the primer. That goes to one of our cylinders in the engine. I rarely use the primer. This engine's very good about starting hot or cold. Here's the avionics master switch on a toggle, so that controls the entire avionics stack and feeds power to it. Here's the duplex master switch. The right side connects the battery to the main electrical bus, and then the right side connects and disconnects the alternator. And all of that data is shown over there on the bottom, which we'll get to that in a second. Our ignition switch is right down here. We've got off, right, left, both, and start. These airplanes are equipped with a dual ignition system, not only for performance, but also for redundancy. So each cylinder has 2 sets of spark plugs, unlike a car, which will have 1 spark plug per cylinder. We've got 2 labeled placards here. VA, which is maneuvering speed of this airplane, is 97 knots indicated airspeed. KIAS, which is what that stands for. And then my VMMS, which is minimum maneuvering speed, not to be confused with maneuvering speed from the manufacturer. It's a different figure that, it's a long story, but it's a training concept that basically helps prevent loss of control accidents. I do not get below that airspeed until I'm established on final and the wings are unloaded. And I basically have no turns left to make. There are exceptions to that rule, of course. If I'm coming into a real short strip or clearing some trees and stuff and I got to turn over the trees, then I may get a little bit slower than that, but it's just an awareness thing, and I also have that line bugged on my airspeed indicator with that white tape. I should really change that to fluorescent tape, like fluorescent orange, fluorescent yellow or something, just because it's the same color roughly as the airspeed needle. So I should probably change that at some point. It's on my list. Here's a turn coordinator, mechanical gyro that runs on 12 volts. The 2-minute turn coordinator, pretty standard. I've seen that in a lot of airplanes. Dual Garmin G5s, and they are redundant flight displays. So we actually have 2 attitude indicators on board, and then of course, ForeFlight has synthetic vision as well, so we're pretty redundant with that kind of stuff. I'll switch it back to the HSI. On the top G5, you got an entire 6-pack. Got ground speed here. We do not have the GAD 13, which would feed outside air temperature to the Garmin stuff, and of course, Garmin and their proprietary ways will not talk to my Electronics International temperature probe. So I would have to have 2 outside air temp probes. We've got airspeed, altimeter, a sensitive altimeter that you can correct for barometric pressure, and I've got 8,500 bugged just to help me keep track of my altitude there. And then of course the artificial horizon. We've got a turn coordinator at the very bottom, and then an inclinometer, which is the slip skid indicator right there in the middle. The vertical speed is shown all the way over here on the right, and that is a full 6-pack. Down on the bottom G5 here, you got the HSI, which shows our course, our CDI, distance to our next waypoint, a bearing pointer pointing to our next waypoint, which is also our desired track. They're pointing to the same place right now. You got a heading bug that helps you keep track of where you're supposed to be pointed. So the G5s are really, really cool units. We got those put in. Not sure if we're going to keep them yet. Might upgrade to something else. Not sure at this point. Over here we have another sensitive altimeter. Again, this is the primary and this is the primary. So these 4 analog instruments are the primary of their own kind. This is the primary attitude indicator. This is the primary heading indicator. And then up here we got 2 LEDs. Those are connected straight to the engine monitor. Because the engine monitor is positioned outside of the pilot's immediate field of view, it's over here. If anything gets into the yellow or red and drifts out of the green, one of these lights are going to start blinking and let me know how severe the problem is. If it's yellow, that's called master caution. If it's red, that's master warning. Yellow is obviously not as bad as red. Yellow is just kind of, hey, get your attention, hey, something's getting out of parameters, you should look over here and see what it is. Red is like, okay, something is not okay, you need to do something about it. So those are positioned right in front of my point of view, my field of view, so that I can catch any problem that comes up pretty much as soon as it comes up. So those are connected to the engine monitor. We got an Electronics International timer here, local time, Zulu time, an up counter, a down counter, which is cool for doing holds. You can start the counter when it hits 0, it blinks at you and lets you know, hey, time's up. And then engine time, which we don't really use. That's all on the engine monitor over there. Down here we've got our number 2 CDI. This is number 1 connected to the 430. This is number 2 connected to the GNC 255, which is our second navcom. And we have dual glide slopes in here, so we can shoot an ILS with redundancy. Over here on the audio panel, this is a PMA 8000B, PS Engineering. Up top you got the marker beacon lights, outer, middle, and inner. Intercom controls volume for the back seat and front seat. There's an automatic squelch on this intercom, so you never have to fool with it. And then this is isolate. So right now it's on all. I'll see if I can zoom in here. Right now it's on all. If you go up to ISO, that isolates the pilot by themselves, and all the passengers can talk amongst themselves. Or you can put it on crew, where the 2 front seats are isolated from the 2 back seats on the intercom. So your passengers can continue talking through critical phases and it doesn't bother the pilot. And then the top 2 buttons here, this is COM 1 and COM 2, receive and transmit, so we can select which radios we're listening to, which radios we are transmitting on. Real quick way to do that. And then this is to monitor nav 1, nav 2, those were very loud. And then this is to connect a phone to the audio panel. I've never done that before. So then there's some auxiliary functions here, function A, function B, function C, basically to just change settings there. And then this is for music mute. It's kind of backwards, but I keep that on, which basically does not mute this when air traffic control comes in, because I don't want air traffic control to silence my traffic alerts and stuff. And then there's a button to listen to an ADF, which we are not equipped, and then there's a button to turn on the overhead speaker to get air traffic control to come out there. The speaker doesn't work incredibly well, but it does work if we had to use it. I'm gonna come over here and just check on traffic. I have not heard my tail number. We're all good. Got a bunch of planes crossing in front of us, but we're monitoring Evansville approach here on 4 flight. Or we're monitoring our route on 4 flight, monitoring Evansville approach, which we are talking to and squawking on the transponder here. So speaking of the rest of the avionics, this is the GNC 255 Garmin navcom. This is the comm side. Hit the comm nav toggle. There's the nav side. You can hit to from, and it collects some GPS data and gives you distance and bearing to the VOR that you have tuned in. I don't have one tuned in range right now. Really great navcom. This thing's really nice. You can put it in OBS mode. It's a really cool little unit. Then coming down, this is a Garmin GTX 345 ADS-B transponder. So this is ADS-B in and out. So we are ADS-B out compliant in this airplane, but we are also ADS-B in capable, and the iPad will connect Bluetooth to the transponder and receive ADS-B from the airplane and its GPS sources and everything. However, right now, it says up here in the corner, I'm connected to Sirius XM, which is coming from my Garmin GDL 52. I did get sponsored by Sirius XM a little while ago, earlier this year, and they were gracious enough to send me this unit. I've totally fallen in love with it. It's awesome, and I really love the weather data that it gives me there. So that's actually what I'm connected to right now, not the Garmin. But the Garmin is a good backup. I got a couple placards down here. This is just for IFR. The top one's for IFR stuff. The bottom one is for go-arounds and missed approaches. This is the 5 T's over a fix, so anytime you cross a fix while you're IFR, turn the CDI, start or stop the time or check the time. Turn the airplane, check the time, twist the CDI, knob, the OBS, omnidirectional bearing selector, adjust your throttle if needed, and notify ATC if needed. The bottom one is for go-arounds and missed approaches. Cram all of your engine controls forward usually, or wherever they need to go. That's mainly for throttle. Cram the throttle all the way forward and push the carb heat in. Establish a climb, clean up the airplane, carb heat and flaps, click, take the GPS out of suspend and activate the missed approach, and then communicate. Tell air traffic control. So that's what that's for. Down here is glare shield lights. We've got white and red glare shield lights and then a dimmer for them. They're up here under the glare shield, lights the airplane up nicely for safe operations at night. I'm skipping over this entire lower panel. I'll come back to it here in just a minute. Moving over to the right, this is an Electronics International MVP50P for piston. And this particular one is a 4-cylinder model. This is a primary engine monitor, meaning when I say primary, that means it is certified to replace all of the stock engine gauges. There are some that are not primary, and they're like a little unit that is supplemental to your primary engine gauges that are certified with the airplane. This one actually replaced everything. So we took all the mechanical stuff out, and now we are running this guy. Got manifold pressure up here, RPM, percent horsepower. We're running 63%.
991, contact Fort Campbell approach 118.1.
118.1809991. Good day. Let me take this hand off real quick. I haven't seen any traffic out here, and it's nice and smooth. Fort Campbell approach, Skyhawk 80991, 8600 VFR. Either they're putting down their coffee or I can't hear them yet. I'll try them one more time. Fort Campbell approach, Skyhawk 80991.
133.65, 3365 today.
I can barely hear him. Fort Campbell approach, Skyhawk 80991.
Skyhawk 80991, Campbell approach.
80991, we got you now. You're coming in pretty weak, but we should get you better here. 8600 VFR.
Skyhawk 991, roger, maintain VFR altimeter 3003.
039991. And we'll maintain VFR. Okay. Continue the tour. Sometimes that happens, we get handed off to a controller and we're like just on the edge of where they can hear us or where we can hear them, and that's the case right now in Fort Campbell, so we'll hear them a little bit better here in a little bit. And we're ultimately VFR responsible for our own terrain and obstruction clearance and traffic clearance and everything. Okay, so back over here to the engine monitor. Got outside air temperature in Fahrenheit and Celsius. Let me just zoom in here, that'll be better. And then our bar graph here is exhaust gas temperatures and cylinder head temperatures, which are freaking awesome. This whole unit right here is probably the best investment we've made in this airplane, because it ensures that we catch problems with the engine before they become a real problem. This thing is how we knew that the engine was ready for an overhaul. Some temperatures were not looking right. The oil pressure just wasn't really behaving anymore. Then we decided, okay, let's just go ahead and tear down the engine before something bad happens. And sure enough, engine was totally ready. We got Zulu time and flight time there, estimated fuel on board, which is the fuel totalizer, and then immediately to the right of that over there, left fuel, right fuel. Those are actually the float senders that are in the fuel tanks and the wings. So that's two different ways to measure fuel, and we can cross-check them. Very, very accurate stuff. And then on the right side, we got oil pressure, oil temp. Fuel flow, which is how the fuel totalizer works. It's actually measuring how much fuel we're burning at any given time. Carburetor temperature, which is cool. That kind of tells us if we're running the risk of icing in the carburetor. We got volts and amps down at the bottom there. Amps are bouncing around just a little bit, but that's normal. It's always done that. Might be how the shunt is installed or something like that. We've got T to E, that's time to empty. We've got 4 hours and 45 minutes of fuel on board. Then right below that is engine hours, and then right below that is the shock cool factor, or the shock cool number, S-cool. And shock cooling, it's a very controversial subject. If you research it online, some people say it's not real, but an engineer that knows what they're talking about will tell you that it is real, because thermodynamics. And basically, that tells you how quickly your cylinders are cooling off when you're descending and pulling your power back. So effectively, you don't want to, the rule on this one starts warning me when I hit 40 degrees per minute, cooling the cylinder off 40 degrees per minute. When you get down to 50, it's cooling off at 50 degrees Fahrenheit per minute, that's where it starts to blink at me and warn me that, hey, you're cooling your cylinders off really quick, you could crack ahead, which would obviously not be good. I put a placard here that says reset fuel totalizer after refuel because I always forget to do it. I will fuel the airplane up and then forget to reset it and say full fuel, and then I'll be cruising along and it'll start blinking at me low fuel, and I'll be like, oh crap, I forgot to reset it. No big deal, but it's kind of annoying. There's a placard down here which was required for the installation of the power flow exhaust. Basically just lets you know that, hey, this airplane's going to burn more fuel than stock at full power. So use caution, be aware of it. Over here is a little cheap carbon monoxide detector. They don't work tremendously great, and actually I need to replace that one. But they can let you know if you got carbon monoxide in the cabin. We've never really had a problem with that in this airplane, luckily, but we do have that over there. And then I've got a placard here that's search and rescue information. So all that is based on if you're air filing and telling air traffic control, hey, there's a cloud layer up ahead, I want to pick up an IFR down into this airport, blah, blah, blah. They'll need this search and rescue information from you most of the time. So when they say, I'll just need your search and rescue information, the transmission is going to be recorded. They're not writing it down, so you don't necessarily need to say it super slow. But they just need to know aircraft type and color, aircraft home base, what kind of survival or emergency equipment do you have on board, how much fuel on board do you have in the format of hours and minutes, how many souls on board, and the pilot's name and phone number. So that way if you wind up missing, you don't make it to your destination, somebody's looking for you, they'll know who to contact and kind of what they're looking for and where to look roughly. Up here is the magnetic compass. That's a SIRS compass with a little 12-volt light. I freaking love that thing. It's awesome. It's a great, great little compass. So that about does it for the upper panel. So what I'll do is I'll kind of figure out how to go down here. I already talked about pretty much from the ignition switch over to the left. So we'll start here. This is basically just where, get a good shot of it. These are circuit breakers. So if you have a circuit fail or shorts out or something, one of these will pop out, and they've got a little red ring around it so it gets your attention. And then immediately to the right of that we have our, basically the bulk of our electrical switches in this airplane. Pitot heat, which heats up the pitot tube out there on the wing, which controls our airspeed, or takes in the ram air pressure to show us our airspeed on the indicator. Nav lights, beacon light, strobe light, and landing light. This airplane only has one light in the nose. And then right here is our carburetor heat knob that funnels hot air through the carburetor to prevent icing. This is a duplex panel light dimmer, and we've got ring lights inside all of these instruments, so you turn up that dimmer and it lights those up. And then of course we also have the glare shield lights, which are really nice. Right here controls the throttle and the carburetor. Right here controls the fuel to air mixture in the carburetor, so basically how much fuel you're mixing with the ambient air. And of course at higher altitude we lean this thing way back, and I'm actually running lean of peak right now thanks to the power flow tuned exhaust. I definitely would not be able to run lean of peak without the tuned exhaust. Lean of peak is another very controversial subject because of just the vast amount of people who are uneducated about it. So we are running lean of peak right now. I'd have to go in there and look at where peak was to tell you exactly how many degrees, but we are pushing 2,500 RPM up here at 8,500 feet, 64% horsepower at 6.5 gallons an hour. And I definitely like running lean of peak. Also, lean of peak helps us, it brings up our EGTs, so we're running about 80 degrees hotter than our EGTs ran before the power flow tuned exhaust and before we could run lean of peak. But our cylinders are also about 15 or 20 degrees cooler, so it's a heat exchange. The exhaust is hotter because it's evacuating heat away from the cylinder heads. So pretty cool. right beneath the throttle and mixture, we've got alternate static air. So if I cycle this, you'll see the static instruments kind of bouncing, and that's switching to a different static source, just in case the one outside gets clogged or iced up. Here's our full range flaps, wing flap switch that I was talking about. It's just an electric switch. Up and down positions. 3 circuit breakers, Attitude G5, HSI G5, the GMU 11, which is the magnetometer, and then the GAD 29, which connects all of that to the 430. Immediately to the right of that, we've got a 12 volt, what used to be a cigarette lighter. We're just using it as a 12 volt outlet, obviously. Powering my Garmin GDL52 and keeping my iPad fully charged here. Cabin air, which pulls air in from outside, and then cabin heat, which pulls air over the exhaust can, a big shroud that goes over the exhaust manifold, and that just pulls hot air in. Over here you got a glove box, got some papers in there, another iPhone charging cable, boggles, all that kind of stuff. And then just a couple pockets down there. Those are headset jacks. And then of course on the yoke, the only control we've got on the yokes is the push to talk. Got another one over here. So, beyond that, leave your comments down below. I think that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple 172 panel. It's obviously been dolled up by our avionics, everything except an autopilot. We're not sure if this is going to be the final setup of this airplane. That we're definitely going to get a new panel recut, if nothing else, and get a gray panel. My dad and I both want to do a gray metal panel, and then we'll figure out if we think an autopilot is indeed worth it in this thing or not. But yeah, beyond that, it's a great airplane. We love this thing. I guess I could go down here and just talk about the console work. Just a couple things. This is the elevator trim. The wheel here controls the trim tab on the elevator. A handheld mic that's connected to the radio, just in case we weren't using headsets. And then right here is the fuel selector. So we're running on both right now, feeding evenly from both tanks. Then we got left, right, and off. We pretty much fly this airplane always on both, but after every flight, I take it off of both, and I switch up where I leave it. Sometimes I'll leave it parked on left, sometimes I'll leave it on right or off. And that's just for a couple of reasons. To keep the O-rings and the fuel selector exercised, and because after we bought this airplane, I don't think it had moved off of both in many years, and I moved it and broke the O-rings because they were so dried up, and then we had a major fuel leak. So ever since then, we got it rebuilt, the fuel selector down in there, and after every flight, I exercise it and make sure that I keep those O-rings nice and exercised. And the other reason is to turn off the crossfeed. So if the airplane is parked slightly on a slope, I don't want fuel to flow from one wing to the other. So I will actually turn off the crossfeed, and that prevents, basically just take it off both. That closes the crossfeed. That prevents that from happening. The only other thing that I can think of here is a fire extinguisher. We've got it bolted to the floor. We got that installed shortly after we bought the airplane. Every freaking airplane needs a fire extinguisher. If you have an in-flight fire, there is nothing you can do about it if you do not have one of these. Get a fire extinguisher, and I check it before every flight, make sure it's in the green. I'm very opinionated on that. Definitely need a fire extinguisher. I get lots of questions about the iPad, actually. This is running 4Flight with a Performance Plus subscription provided to me by 4Flight since we're sponsored. And it's just such an awesome product. It's everything you need. Keeps us so freaking safe with weather. And then, of course, we're connected to it with SiriusXM, getting NextRad, traffic, all that kind of stuff. This is an iPad Mini 5. The Mini, I think, is so great for flying. It fits so perfectly right here. And this is a Ram yoke mount that clamps to the yoke right here. I've got the medium-sized arm attached right here. And then I have the yoke mount actually flipped upside down right here. If I had the iPad right side up, it would be covering up, it'd be covering up the instruments quite a bit. And I don't like that. So I actually have it just flipped upside down, and then I turn the portrait lock on, make sure it doesn't do its flippies when I'm moving the controls around, but it just stays nice and low. It's not covering up anything from my eye line. It's not affecting my view at all. So it's really perfect. So this is an iPad Mini 5. This is a very uncustomary video. I haven't really done anything like this, but I mean, I'm up here burning fuel, burning time. I figured I haven't done like a full cabin tour of the Skyhawk before. So I figured I might as well just whip my phone out. I didn't take any cameras with me. I left them all in Kentucky. So I might as well just do a full cockpit tour, talk about all the equipment we've put in this airplane, and some of the placards that I think are really important, the fire extinguisher, what kind of iPad I'm using, all that kind of stuff. So please leave your questions down in the comments. I'll be scrubbing through them and answering questions that weren't already answered in the video. And definitely give the video a like if you liked it. Give it a dislike if you didn't, but please go down in the comments and tell me why. And subscribe if you haven't. Turn on those notifications and stay tuned. Beyond that, yeah, I can't think of anything else. I'm going to put the phone or the camera down here, probably listen to some music and keep listening to air traffic control, monitor the engine, and just enjoy the flight, enjoy the view. Y'all know the drill. Stay happy, healthy, current, and most importantly, stay proficient. Get out there and go fly. Fly safe. We'll see you in the next one.